Hey guys, welcome to this sew along. I am making the Liliana dress today. I made it in this beautiful ditzy floral. It's very cottage core, very prairie core, if that's a thing. It's got a shirred waistline, it's got ruffles, all the good stuff that you want in a dress. It's so beautiful. And today I'm gonna walk you through my process of making it, hoping that if you plan to make it, it will help you. So today is a sew along for the Liliana dress by Mila Oni. This is a project that I outlined in my winter sewing plans video where I talked about the fabric that I had intended to make it with. Spoiler alert, that did not work out. How much it cost me to make it, and then all my other winter plans, you can watch that video here. I realized that there's not currently a sew along for this video online, so I decided to make one. If you're a visual learner like me, I hope it helps you. Quick overview of the pattern. The pattern isn't too challenging. She rates it a 2 out of 5. I would also rate it as an intermediate. If you've never done pockets before, it has shirring. Sleeves can be a little tricky, but I do think that a confident beginner could tackle this project. There are 3 views, which is just 3 different sleeve lengths, so those are your options for altering the pattern. I chose to go with a long sleeve. I wanted to lean fully into the prairie kind of cottagecore vibe. I started with a size medium based on my measurements. I ended up having to change that. Honestly, this project did not go as I had planned. It's a whole dramatic saga. Let's just jump into the video and I will tell you all about it. I have the pattern all laid out. I'm going for a size medium. So I grabbed a yellow pen and just marked in a couple places just to help me remember where to cut. So I like to mark my size. There are a lot of pieces, so this might take me a second. Well, I have run into a problem. There is not enough fabric here to make this pattern. I need 2 of those sleeves and to cut all of these out, and this is just not enough. That's what I get for quickly Google searching how many yards are in a twin sheet, only to learn that the result was not accurate. It's more like 2.5 yards. I'm not really sure what to do now. I need new fabric. I don't have anything that is 4 yards, so this needs to be postponed. As you can imagine, I was super bummed to not be able to use the fabric that I had initially planned. I love it when I'm able to thrift something. I really liked that floral pattern, and it pushed my pattern back a couple days because I had to find something else. I tried to thrift, but didn't have any luck, so I waited until my fabric store had a sale. I had been eyeing this blue ditzy floral when I was there previously. Now that it was on sale, I decided to go for it. Even at 40% off, 4 yards cost me $19, which is not cheap for me, but the outcome, I think it's worth it. It's a very beautiful dress. But the fabric not working out was just issue number 1, which quickly ran into issue number 2. Just wanted to give a quick update. So I had to buy new fabric because the sheet was not big enough. I calculated incorrectly. And then the 4 yards of fabric that I bought from my fabric store wasn't wide enough. It was 42 inches and the fabric in the pattern calls for like 60-inch wide fabric, which I have personally never seen at my local fabric store. So I really struggled to lay everything out to get it cut. I actually had to size down in order to fit the skirt pattern piece. It was too wide for the fabric. So I sized down to a small medium and I'm just trying to make it work. I hope it fits right, but we shall see. That was probably my own error in not reading all of the instructions prior, but there's just a lot to read and I really like to just not get stuck in the details and then just go for it. But that's just kind of my style. Plugging ahead, I'm really excited for this fabric. If it doesn't fit me, I can give it to somebody else. After cutting everything out, apply the interfacing to the wrong side of the fabric. This is fusible interfacing, so it's going to fuse to the fabric. You should have some markings from the pattern of where this goes, but it does line up really well with the little V from the neckline. That's all stuck on. Moving to the pockets. These also should have been marked out in the pattern. We're going to take our strips. It's going to overlap the notch by just a centimeter. Again, this is on the wrong side of the fabric. Step 3 was stay stitching all of the curved lines. So this is going to be the top and back neckline and the tops of the sleeves. So I tightened up my stitches a little bit and sewed along the curves. Step 4 is marking the elastic channels. and preparing the keyhole facing, which brings us to issue number 3. So I transferred the markings from the pattern piece to the fabric for the keyhole. I pinned that to the front of the dress, good sides together, and sewed following the markings, which is that long rectangle. I did manually stitch the short side of the rectangle just for better accuracy. And then I clipped along the markings with that little V at the bottom. I flipped to the wrong side of the dress and ironed, which is where I noticed my interfacing error. All right, now I know where I went wrong. I was supposed to attach this interfacing to this larger piece, but in the pattern, she refers to the pattern numbers incorrectly. She mentioned something about the keyhole facing being piece 7, but piece 7 is one of the ties. So that's where I got confused. This would turn much nicer if it had interfacing attached to it, but I do think this is gonna turn out just fine. So I'm going to stitch all the way around here to finish the keyhole opening. Step 5 is to make the bias binding for the elastic channels. So you cut 4 strips, make the bias binding, and pin those over the markings that you made previously. Here I'm making the last 3 pieces. You can use pre-made 1/2-inch binding, but I wanted to use the floral fabric because it's softer and it's prettier for the interior of the dress. These are all pinned on and I will sew them along the edges. Taking some elastic around my underbust and adding about 1 inch of seam allowance, I then cut that piece in 2 and threaded those through the channels that I just made. And this is what the front's looking like. I love the insides of this dress. Some people call them the guts, but I don't really like that term. But the interior looks so clean and so pretty. Most pre-made bias binding is made with polyester. I wanted to keep this dress 100% cotton, and I wanted it to be softer since it will be sitting around my ribcage. Step 6 is the pockets. I serged around the edges and added them to the pre-marked sections of the skirt. And then sewed those on. The step after that would be sewing down the side seams of the dress, around the pockets, and then down to the hem. Next step is the sleeves. I ironed to create the creases that the pattern lays out for you. We'll use these creases later for the elasticated ruffle sleeve, but first we're going to pin right sides together along the underside of the sleeve. And then sew that up. It was starting to get dark, so I didn't finish filming the sleeves, but there are notches and markings to help you to differentiate the front and the back of the sleeve. And then you sew those on, creating kind of like a semicircle and then overlock to finish. Step 8 is the ruffle. This is basically a giant piece of bias binding, so this step has a lot of ironing in it. I'm going to attach the right side of the ruffle to the inside or the wrong side of the dress. I really didn't think this was going to fit, but the more I manipulated the ruffle and the sleeves, it did fit. The pattern even says that this will happen due to the curves of the sleeve piece. So if you're making this, keep the faith, it will work. It is helpful to line up and pin the front pieces and the center back first before pinning the rest in place. So here she is all pinned. I'm going to sew along the neckline and the tops of the sleeves to attach the ruffle. This is how she's looking now. I'm going to turn the dress right side out and pull the ruffle to the good side of the dress, and we will pin over what we just sewed. I stitched it right at the edge, and now I'm making a casing for the front ties by sewing a parallel line to the one I just made. I used my presser foot as a gauge to measure this. Then making the ties, which is more bias binding and more ironing. I saw in the daisy frock pattern by Lydia Naomi that using a piece of paper under the tie helps the sewing machine to kind of catch the paper. There are those feed dogs, which are those kind of metal grate looking things underneath your sewing machine that moves fabric along. But since there isn't much to work with a tie, the paper catches it and helps it to move through. So I feel like this did help. I did have to pull the paper a little bit to get it to move through and just to get it started. Once those ties are attached to the elastic, you'll thread that through the top neckline to create that ruffled look. Here I am just stretching the elastic through, evening everything out, moving the fabric along the elastic and the tie string so everything looks uniform. Step 9, lastly, is the bottom hem. I made a bit of a smaller hem than the pattern calls for. Ideally, I would have liked to make a maxi dress, but I didn't have enough fabric for that, so I just made a bit of a smaller hem. Not that it did much for lengthening it, but I'll take what I can. She is all done. I think we should take her out for a spin. I think the dress turned out beautifully. I do feel like some of the details get lost in the busyness of the floral pattern, but I love the floral pattern so much, so I don't really care. I feel like the best part of making something is how beautiful it makes you feel and the pride you feel at making something yourself. Even if the hard work doesn't really show, you know how hard you worked on it. Like I mentioned before, the insides are clean and they're beautiful, and only I get to see those. Well, you have seen them, but you get what I mean. It's just satisfying to make something yourself and feel that pride of a job well done. Despite the issues I ran into, I did have fun making this dress. I would make it again. I'd probably try a different sleeve length next time. There is a lace option, and I think that's really pretty. I'm really excited to bring it into my me-made wardrobe. This is a 100% cotton dress, which is a goal of mine for 2025. I shared that in this video, which brings me to my next point. I wanted to thank you all for the feedback on that video and what you wanted to see. That really helps me plan out my videos for 2025. And I appreciated all the kind words. So thank you so much for joining this sew along. If you were sewing it, I hope it helped you through the process. Or if you just enjoy sew alongs like I do, hopefully it was fun to see the process from beginning to end. This is not my pattern, but if you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them if you want to comment those below. And I will see you in the next video where I am sharing updates on my knitting journey. So if you like all things crafting, thrifting, and mindful living, hit subscribe and I'll see you soon. Cheers.